Hello and welcome to another episode of the Young Tongues podcast. My name is Barbara Fountain and I'm the founder and CEO of the Young Tongues, a peer-to-peer support group for young tongue cancer patients. And I bring you a fabulous guest today, someone that I've known for many, many years, but it's actually the first time we're getting to meet and chat today. Roz, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Hello. I know, I feel like I've probably met you like a long time ago, but this is actually the first time we've met. I mean, I met Jamie a couple of years ago when I went down to LA, so like, I can't believe this is the first time you and I are meeting.
Absolutely. No, it's such a delight. And we've always been in touch via Facebook and the groups, but never actually got to speak. So I'm so delighted. So just for our listeners, where are you based? And what's your current situation in terms of cancer? Is it a long time ago? Has it been recent?
I'm based in Vancouver, Canada, so there's a lot of FIFA stuff happening around the city. I was actually diagnosed 10 years ago. October 2025 was when I was officially diagnosed. I actually just hit my 10-year anniversary in April for when I had completed treatment. I had surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy, which was cisplatin. Recently, I have had encountered those expected side effects from radiation, as we all know that radiation is a gift that keeps on giving. But for the most part, I'm going in a positive direction. I'm healing really well. They're saying we're even in talks now of getting partials to replace any tooth that I'm missing. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's amazing.
Fun
Well,
journey.
I'm always delighted. I'm always delighted when we have someone on who's like 10 years plus, because it's just so rare to hear someone's point of view who's been through it and also
Mm-hmm.
is now further along to also see what the life after is like, with, the dreaded side effects and everything. But I am going to take you back 10 years
Yes,
and we're
I am.
going to test your memory. So,
Remember it all.
so I guess my first question is, when did you first notice something wasn't right, and what happened after?
I had absolutely no symptoms. I was at work. I was in a position that was within grade red shift. I was having my lunch and I bit my tongue. That bite turned into a sore. And I was like, well, maybe I just bit my tongue really hard. And eventually, at the point where my partner and was like, I think this time she's a doctor because it's been a few months. So I had bit my tongue in the spring of 2015. Uh, uh, some around that time, I started seeing the doctor who was like, "Oh, you're too young. You don't smoke. You don't drink."
I'm so sorry, Roz. I'm just going to stop you because the sound was fine and then it just stopped working until I got you all the way to, spoke to your dentist who said you were too young. I don't know
My
why this
doctor,
keeps
yeah.
clipping. Oh, your doctor, yes. Let me just try one more thing. And if I go into this, so if you accept that. Okay, let's go back to, so I hope this works from a yeah. And question is, so you saw your doctor and he basically said you're too young, you don't smoke, don't worry about it.
Yeah, he said, you don't smoke, you don't really drink. I was working graveyard at the time, so he kind of brushed it as I'm not getting enough sleep. My immune system's probably weak. He put me on some antibiotics, and some painkillers, I remember. And from then on, it just wasn't healing. And every visit to the doctor, we were switching medications because it was like, oh, your body's probably used to this one and that one. Where it got to the point where the sore was just going to get dead and it had the right patches. And of course, at that time, I'm going onto the internet and diagnosing myself because I'm like, there's no way that this is just a cold sore. right? And that the next visit to the doctor, he actually put me on a steroid cream, which I found out that cancer actually feeds on steroids. And that didn't work. It actually made it worse. And my final visit to the doctor, you can see it on his face. He had no answers, and he was like, "Okay." He said, "What I needed to do is I needed to go see your dentist." He said, "Your dentist doesn't just look at your teeth. He's a full mouth specialist, and they'll be able to really figure out what's happening here because I don't have an answer." Right. So at that point, the sore was really big. It was very painful. It hurt when I yawned. And I remember it got to the point where sometimes when I started to talk, it would bleed. So I made an appointment at the dentist. I believe the following week. This is by October. So I had been dealing with this since the spring. And I got to the dentist. I sat there. I laid down for 5 minutes. He sat me up, and immediately he was like, "I can tell you this right now, it's cancer." And I'm like, "Excuse me?" And I was like, "Hold on, isn't it tongue cancer?" Right? And he was like, "I've seen this many times before, and I'm guaranteeing it's cancer." And he's like, "I need you to go see a pathologist so that we can do a biopsy." And then he's, "As a matter of fact, I'm at a pathologist right now, and we're going to get you in tonight." And my heart was like, "Is it that bad?" So I went into the pathologist that night, and even he was like, "Okay, we're going to take a biopsy, we're going to put you in for, I think it was the following week." And he was like, "But I can tell you as well, this is cancer." And then he says, "But it's okay, you got the good one." And
All right. Does it get on a bad?
I was like, "What do you mean I got the good one?" And he was like, "This is a very highly survivable cancer, you got the good one." Right? But of course, later down the road, you don't really understand the deformities that come with it and the type of treatment and how barbaric the treatment actually is. And like, when I look back at it now, that this was not at all classified as a good one.
No, and it's crazy. So already there's a few failings there that the general doctor, I mean, it's fair enough that he or she realised that they weren't able to solve this problem, but they should have really done that at the first stop. And that's like it's like an international problem. So if someone's listening and thinking, "Oh, this only happens in Canada," it does not. It's doctors, as general practitioners, are fantastic, but I think in their training, the training they get on the oral cavity, so in what's in the mouth, it's like half a day of their entire training. So we don't expect them to be experts in terms of your oral health, but you'd hope that a general practitioner just goes, "You know what, go and see a dentist," because the dentists are the ones that really know what's happening and can spot things.
At one of the appointments, he actually pulled out his phone, and I wasn't sure if he went on the internet or if he had resources on his phone. He was like, "Look, that you don't fall under any of the categories that would be anything concerning."
Oh, God. Yes. So there are many stereotypes Young Tongues is trying to fight, that this cancer doesn't just affect the elderly, smoking, alcoholic stereotype male, but it happens to young, healthy women as well. So yes, so you got when you eventually saw your dentist, you got your diagnosis pretty quick because the ulcer had progressed so much that it was obviously very obvious that they were dealing with cancer.
Yeah.
I'm just interested because this is like 10 years ago now, and I don't know how much has changed in 10 years, but how, in terms of how they reacted to you having this type of cancer, were they like, "Oh, this is really unusual because you're so young," or were they like, "Oh no, we've seen this before and this can happen"?
You know, I think when it came to my own GP, it was like, it's not you, it's not you. But as soon as I started to progress, and I actually started to gain more people on my team, medical professionals, they even were recognizing that this was happening for people in the younger stages. Because when I was signed on to the cancer agency here, they had actually asked me permission if they can take the biopsy and whatever and be a part of a research. kind of thing that was happening with cancer, because they knew, they understood it was on the rise. They understood that from the moment I saw my pathologist. She thought I was stage 1 to stage 2, and then by the time I had my surgery in December, I had jumped all the way to stage 4, so it progressed pretty fast. So they understood that it was cancer that was starting to be more, and I hate to use this word, common, and more common with the people that is not scientifically in the books of the male smokers and heavy drinkers. And a lot of us have been actually HPV negative. I was HPV negative, but I had actually no reason. Yeah.
Yeah, but most of us are. And it's always bizarre when I meet clinicians and researchers and I say, oh, no, most people in the young tongues are HPV negative. And they're like, what? But yeah, because it's cavity tongue cancer, not oropharyngeal, which base of tongue oropharyngeal is a slightly different in terms of HPV status. I just remembered and thinking back about this dentist saying, oh, you got the good type of cancer. Right. Obviously,
yeah,
completely
oblivious. It was a pathologist who said that. And I was like, you see so many types of things, and I'm like, how is this the good one?
Absolutely. Oh my goodness me. So you have your diagnosis. What happened after, if you remember? You met your team, they spoke about surgery.
Yeah, I met my surgeon. Literally, I was brought to my surgeon within that month. We had my surgery. Everything happened so fast because I was diagnosed October 1st. I had my surgery December 4th. And by that time, like I said, what they had thought was going to happen in my surgery was that it was definitely done through my mouth, and that was going to be a quick, maybe 5-7 hour surgery. By the time I got to the hospital, I had barely opened my mouth. Like I said, it got to the point where the sore started bleeding when I was taught. And at the bedside, they asked me if we had to use the mandible saw, and we get your permission. And at that point, I'm already in my surgery, and I'm like, what other choice do I have, right? And
yes.
I remember when, you know how when you're in surgery and they pat you down as the anesthesia is coming in, I remember them down to 9, 10, 8, and right before I fell asleep, I heard the attendant briefing the team where the mandible saw was, and that was the last thing I heard when I knocked out. And I remember the first thing I did when I woke up was I saw my sister and my partner at the time, and I can see the look on their face. I immediately did this, and they just nodded. Oh, I didn't try it. And they just nodded their head. Later on, throughout, like, when I started to see in the hospital, I ended up finding out that my surgery, that was supposed to be 7 hours, ended up almost becoming 12. Because they did have to saw it within and remove a bunch of lymph nodes. The cancer had spread a lot more than they had expected, and they weren't able to get good margins. So yeah, it was a very rude awakening, I can say.
Psychologically, I can't imagine what it must have been like for you to hear the statement about the mandible split just before going to sleep and then waking up to it. But also, you haven't really had time to mentally prepare yourself that was an option, because they only informed you on the bedside. Because I would assume, I know there wasn't as much online 10 years ago as there is now, but you might have been able to find a picture of someone who was fully healed from a mandible split to be able to visualize that things will heal and look different, instead of like waking up and being, oh my God. I don't know how you felt about your own appearance at the time.
I didn't see my appearance for a while. I remember, and honestly, and yes, like you said, because I never knew that was an option, I never got an opportunity to prepare. So in actuality, my first night waking up was actually quite traumatizing. I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know what was going to happen. There was actually a point where, because I wasn't aware that I was going to get sick as well, right? So I had tracheostomy, and there was a point where I started to cope. Because your lungs will fill with fluid when you have a trach, and it was dark in the room. I was still like drowsy from the medications I was on. It was only my first night waking up. I literally thought that this was like the end of me because I'm coping and there's no one here and I don't know what to do. And I just started banging on the side of my bed, and that was like traumatizing for me. And like when the nurse came, she said you did the right thing. That's how you have to communicate with us. And I'm like, no one told me. But I was in panic mode. I wasn't communicating. I was panicking. Right. So yeah, like, I do wish that we had known that that would have been an option. But I also believe that my team at the time didn't think I would progress so fast in 2 months.
Absolutely. No, and that's completely understandable.
Yeah.
But I think that's because I remember we've had these chats before in the Facebook group about mental preparedness and also with the trach, because it does feel like you're choking or that you're drowning. And without knowing that, that's almost, I don't want to call it normal, but part of the experience. If you know that's the case, it takes a bit away of the fear. But if you don't know, you think you're dying, right? You think, oh God, that's it, I'm gone.
And like, I wish I had known how to clear your lungs because they literally like stick a vacuum down your lungs to remove the fluids, right? And I wish I would have been more prepared for that as well. But at that time, I think because you were just so all like you didn't know that this was going to happen. My surgeon at the time actually told my sister and my partner at the time that you need to be prepared that she may never actually speak again and she may never talk again. And that her surgery was a lot more expensive than we thought. And that they all thought that they would never hear me talk again. And that I would be on a feeding tube for the rest of my life. Yeah.
Oh, you showed them.
Oh
You
my
showed
God.
them.
I remember when I was like on day 8 or 9 at the hospital, I was like, I want to go home. I was like, what do I need to do to go home? And then they were like, you need to be able to eat on your own. I'm like, bet. Right? And I remember when the surgeon came and I was saying, hi, Dr. Krishna. And he was like, are you talking? And I'm like, yeah. I was like, hey. She's like, okay. She said, the moment you can start eating orally on your own, you can go home. And I actually got to go home 2 days earlier, and I was very stubborn. I wanted to be in my own bed.
It's amazing. I love it. I think that's fantastic. So I guess after surgery, you recover. You get a little bit of time to recover from what was a very invasive surgery. Because also with the mandible split, it's the bone that they actually. So your jaw.
Split my whole jaw open, and they had to open me up, and then they
Open it.
removed the entire. So I lost 50%. They removed the entire left side, including what's behind the throat. So I still do have metal plates in my jaw that were used to hold me together. I had the option of later on removing them, but I'm like, if it's an unnecessary surgery, I don't want another one. Yeah.
That's fair enough. I'd be the same. But yes, that's amazing. So, but then I assume with your healing time, because with us, if you don't have a mandible split, it's not bone that is having to heal. It's soft tissue. But then you have the added complications, like you've had a broken jaw that needed to heal with the metal plates. So, does that mean you were? Did it take a lot longer, or I assume you were on pureed food for a really long time?
Very long. I think I was on soft and curated even way past treatment. Only because in addition to having to heal from the surgery, then the side effects from treatment were coming along as well. I I don't have anything else to compare it to other than my own experience. I know that because we did have to split my jaw is the reason why I did have to lose my tooth that teeth. Because where the bones started to heal, the teeth just were not coming back together, and we were always been avoiding the process. And we didn't want an infection to happen, so I had to lose that. And I think I really didn't start incorporating solid food until a couple months after treatment. So again, I'm such a big foodie. I'm stubborn, and I will find my way to eat my food.
Absolutely. Well, we'll talk a bit more about food later because if that features heavily in your story. I just wanted to go because you mentioned they removed the front teeth out of, I guess, to ensure you don't get an infection. So to preserve, what do you call it? Preservative measures? No, that's the wrong word. But preventative measures. There we go. But how did you feel about, like, if you were okay going there? How
Absolutely
did you feel about that? Like, as a young woman?
devastated. As if it wasn't hard enough to walk around with visible scars and an audible difference from people. Like everyone said I had an accent, and I was okay to be with that. But also on the same end, when I had first lost my teeth, I believe it was around COVID time. So it was I had the added benefit of being able to wear my mask, right? So no one saw. But the moments when we started to, lift those things, it was very difficult because I would get judged right away as, I don't know how to put it. Not just that, like, as a woman, you're very much judged on your looks, but the moment, women or man, that you add something to do with your teeth, there is that kind of stereotype thinking that you're unhygienic,
Yeah.
and that you're kind of lower class, I guess you would say. And I would get treated very differently, right? And it was very hard. It was very hurtful. And I remember when I went back to work, um, I started to learn how to do my makeup, and I would go all the way with my makeup, lashes and everything, just to try to cover it up. It's very hard. It's still quite challenging today. Although now it's something that I look at as my battle scars. Something like a lioness that has earned her stripes. But I do still get judged. The public cannot hide the expressions on their face easily enough. But you kind of build this callous through it because you know that what you've been through or what I've been through, like the majority of these people who are judging me probably would never be able to fathom.
Absolutely. And that's the thing is, that's why I mention it, because I know a lot of people in our community struggle with their oral health, be it losing teeth or discoloration or gum loss, anything like that. And I don't think it's vain. I think we all care about the way we look. I certainly do, and I think it can have such a devastating impact on your self-confidence for any sort of facial changes on top of the scars, but also the teeth and the oral hygiene. And I do believe, I think you're right, there is such a stigma attached to someone whose oral health isn't the veneers, white teeth.
I mean, that's like the first thing that people said, right? Especially like a couple of years ago, I had ended that relationship, and I went back into the dating scene. And to go back into the dating scene like this, it's very, as a woman, it's very hard to like own right away. But I knew it was something that I'm gonna have to own, right? So like, when I first started dating, like that was the first thing I said, like, listen, before we meet, I need to let you know, and I would let them decide from there. Fortunately, I have an amazing new partner now, and yeah, he makes me feel like this is like he actually told me when I first told him what my situation was. He was like, "That's what actually makes you special," and I was like, "Oh, my heart." But yeah, like honestly, I think it was because at the end of the day, I can't hide this. I can't change it. It's a part of my journey. It's a part of who I am, the woman I am today.
Absolutely. And that's a big fat green flag there.
Yeah.
That's a very big green flag. Amazing. So so if we continue down sort of the timeline, So you're healing up, and then they talked to you about further treatment. You said they weren't able to get good margins. It had spread a lot further than what they thought it was. How did they, if you remember, how did they introduce radiation and chemo to you? And did you know what you were in for, or was it a shock?
Well, I had an aunt who had breast cancer, so I had seen her through all of it until she had passed. So in my head, I thought it was similar to her journey, but by all means, it was not. I remember being in the hospital bed. That was actually the day that my doctor was like, "Oh, we're speaking." He told me you didn't get good margins. So we will have to proceed with radiation and chemotherapy. But that was something he did tell me. That was something I was prepared for before the surgery. So that was something I was aware of. But again, prior to the surgery, I thought that we caught it fast enough that I wouldn't have to go through chemo and radiation. But we ended up having to go in that direction. So I met with my radiation oncologist, and he prepared me for 33 sessions, 35 to 33 sessions of radiation every day. I got fitted for my mask, and that was probably a traumatizing thing for me too. I was claustrophobic because the way that they have to
Oh,
sit you down to fit you for the mask, and you don't even have like the hose yet fitted in to to breathe. So I actually have my mask for I can show you later if you want. So that was a traumatizing experience. And you also get that typical radiation tattoo that everyone knows of right on their chest. Um, yeah, and then when I met with my chemo oncologist, I remember she sat me down and she was like, we're going to give you cisplatin, and the first thing she asked is, do you plan on having children? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm 35. And I'm like, why is she asking me? And is she talking to the right patient? Like, I have lung cancer. Like, and she's
mm-hmm.
we need to let you know that we probably don't have enough time to freeze your eggs if that's what your option was. That the type of chemotherapy that you will be having will affect your ovaries. And I don't have children now, so obviously never I didn't have children then. And I was like, what? And she was like, so we are just giving you the heads up that you not having children might not be an option. And then
Mm-hmm.
okay, and at that time they were gonna do they were gonna give me cisplatin very aggressively. So it was gonna be cisplatin every 3 weeks, but every those 3 weeks it was gonna be quite aggressive. But I told her that I wanted to have children, like I'm still young. And I was so fortunate because my chemo oncologist at the time was the lead of this kind of genome type of therapy. It was a very personalized type of chemotherapy that they did per patient. So they would organize your schedule based on what your needs was. So she was very flexible with what my wishes were for my future. So she understood that instead of giving me chemotherapy every 3 weeks, we would do it every week, but it would be milder,
At a
right?
lower dose.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the lower doses and like with the radiation, because you know the way the side effects happen is like this, right?
Yeah.
When one goes up, the other goes down, and vice versa. You can't win. So she thought that if it was lower doses, I'd be able to manage my side effects better, and my ovaries would probably not get as severely damaged. Yeah.
Um, okay. Yeah, I'm so, but I also have to say, I'm just so glad they approached it with you, because that's another thing that we picked up in the community quite often, where the conversation about fertility doesn't happen at all with chemo radiation, which is, criminal in my opinion, because you can't just assume because someone is fighting for survival, they don't think about their future.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no. So I do glad they had the conversation. I would have preferred if they had it earlier with you, so you might have had a chance to freeze your eggs.
Yeah.
But
I
there
mean,
you go.
I think honestly, now I think it's a kind of a blessing in disguise because now I can really focus on this advocacy. I think there's a lot of work that has to be done with spreading awareness when it comes to oral cancer. I always said that my purpose is bigger than my pain. And whatever sacrifices that my guides and God had to put me through is because the purpose behind it was a lot bigger.
Absolutely. Right. So radiation day one, chemo day one. Usually okay. I'm not sure what chemo is like on day one, but radiation, people are quite surprised that they're okay to get through it, but it gets worse as time progresses. What was it like for you?
Day one of radiation, I had a panic attack. The moment they strapped me in, I was like, take it off. And I had to sit up for like a minute. And so I wrote him that I just did not expect that. I just needed a minute, right?
Mhm.
Because at that time I hadn't lost a lot of weight yet, so the mass was very tight, and it had really strapped me in. And I remember seeing something online where I was following. Okay, so at that time, because there was not a lot of cancer patients within, I was actually following a lot of breast cancer patients. Women who were advocating for themselves, different types of breast cancers who were advocating for themselves, just because of the strength behind their advocacy. And I couldn't find anyone that I could relate to, and the only women that I could relate to in the cancer community were women with breast cancer. Right? So a lot of the people I spoke to were breast cancer survivors. And there was somebody in the breast cancer community who told me that every time she went through treatment, she spoke to her tumor and she sent it love. And every time I was in that radiation chair, I would be like, I love you. And I don't know what lesson you're trying to teach me, but you're no longer welcome here. I'm sending so much love and grace. That I was trying to not be angry with it because I also understood that we harbor anger inside, right? And I was just trying to come at this as a positive outlook because at that time I really had nothing else, right? It was either that or like fill in the flag. And I was actually quite fortunate that so many women in the breast cancer community, identify, put me in and under their arms, and they were actually the reason why I started to share my story. That has a lot of women in the, and I actually made one of the t-shirts from one of the breast cancer people who started helping me. They were one of the people who said that your survival story is going to be someone else's survival guide, so you need to share it, and we're going to find your people. And as years passed, like, I found my people, you came along, you did Young Tongues, and so many other women that come along, and Jamie, yeah, and it was such a whirlwind of a journey.
It's community that gets you through.
Mm-hmm.
Family, community, whatever you want to call it, they get you through it. I can also imagine that your panic attack on your first radiation day might have had something to do with the mask, being claustrophobic. So I assume, because I don't know if you saw this, but there's been like some studies out, and in some hospitals they are doing new radiation masks, which have a cutout of the face. So you're not completely, so you are completely bolted in, but the center of your face is free. And I think that in itself is so helpful for anyone who struggles with claustrophobia. I don't think they do that for everyone. I think they do it specifically for people who struggle with the containment. I don't know, what holes did you have in your masks? Did you have eye holes and
eyes? Yeah. I remember there was a point too where I had lost so much weight, they were even talking about having to make a new mask for me. But I was like, I don't want to make a new mask. I'm like, do whatever you need to do. I'll lie still, but we're not going to make a new mask.
Absolutely. No, I totally get that. So as you're going through radiation, well, the food, I guess you were still on soft foods, so that kind of helped. But how did things progress going through radiation and chemo with the weeks?
it became very, very difficult. It got to the point where the only thing I was having for nutrition, was Boost, the high
Yeah.
protein Boost beverage. I still can't walk through any of those aisles, and I'll like my days refresh with Boost off. Um, but I was living off Boost, and I know that like probably by the second to last week of treatment, it was so painful to swallow. You know how your eardrums and your throat are connected? But swallowing actually started to hurt my ears, to the point where I had to press on my ear so that I can swallow, so that the pain was kind of a bit manageable. And it got to the point where I called my parents because they were the ones driving me to treatment. And I don't want to do this anymore. And they're like, what? And I'm done. I don't want to do this. I'm done treatment. So my mom called my surgeon. And they're like, bring her in right away. And the surgeon's assistant at the time was like, what's going on? And I was like, okay, I'm not doing any more treatment. I'm in too much pain. It hurts. This isn't worth it anymore. And he's like, I'm dead in your surgeon right now. And he sat me down. He literally, like, he saved my life. Like, he convinced me to complete as much as I could. He literally pulled up a chair right in front of me and sat there and was like, what do we need to do to get you to where you're at? Because you're almost there. He's like, you're almost there, Roz. And I'm like, everything hurts, Dr. Krishnan. And he's like, what can you do to get you there? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, okay, let's make a plan. If you can have 4 boosts a day, make sure your calorie is 1,200 calories a day minimum, just to get you surviving. Is that will get you to the end of treatment and you're done. And then I looked at him and he was like, you're almost there, Roz. And he was the only one I listened to. If he didn't convince me to finish any of it, I wouldn't do it. I know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's such a good point because we a lot of us struggle so much with in consuming any amount of calories. It gets dangerous. So I assume from what you're saying you were quite had malnutrition, lost a lot of weight. But also
the whole journey. I think I was about 200 pounds. By the end of treatment, I had gone down to 121 pounds.
wow.
I literally was like skin hanging off bone. I think that was a lot of it too, because on top of the pain and on top of the side effects, looking in the mirror, I was like, I looked at myself and I'm halfway close to death. And I don't even know who I am looking at myself.
Yeah, who are you? And that can be so difficult to continue going when you're in that place. So I'm so glad your consultant stepped up and
me too.
cheerleaded you through it. So I was so glad to hear that. So let's fast forward a bit to the end of treatment. Did you get to ring a bell?
No.
No. It's so annoying.
And you know what? I think it was like my last radiation treatment. I got up and then I hugged the technician. She's like, "Do you want to keep the mask?" And I stared at it. I'm like, "Yeah, I want to keep the mask. I'm keeping that mask, and I'm gonna like I don't know what I'm gonna do if I'm not keeping that mask." And I never got to ring the bell. I don't know if it's because I rushed out, and they were like, "She's so excited to get out of here, just let her go." But no, it's so funny because a couple of years ago, I got to go to Italy with my parents, and we were in St. Anthony of Padua. And then I actually read about his story. Do you know about St. Anthony of Padua?
No, I don't.
When he was buried, they uncovered his body then, and the only thing that didn't deteriorate was his tongue. And they said that then I know, right? And then they said that because he was able to like talk the gospel of it. And I went on this trip to Italy, and that was the first church I went to, and it was about someone about his tongue, and I was like, this was meant to be. So when I was there, I bought myself a bell. And when I
I
hit
love
my
it.
10 year, I ran it and I ran that thing hard.
That's brilliant. I love that. I'm so glad you got that moment. And that's amazing. Yeah, it's weird how suddenly tongues feature in your life in random ways. I've had it happen to me a couple of times where I've gone somewhere and then there was a tongues were very heavily featured, and I'm like, "You kidding? Yeah, it's just meant to be." Oh, that's amazing. So, but basically, you finished your treatment. You were like, "I'm out of here. See you later. Bye."
Yeah.
So we know that radiation continues to act for a bit, and things get a little bit worse before they get better, but they do eventually get better. How was that journey for you, trying to heal, trying to learn how to eat again, how to look at yourself in the mirror, accept yourself, and find yourself? Sorry, that's like 6 questions in one.
No.
But
It was actually weird because when I was still in the middle of radiation and chemotherapy, I had to constantly go to the agency to get IV because I was so dehydrated. So they would have to constantly give me IV, and because my burns were so bad, they would also just put like some compresses on my burns. But the nurses were like, "This is odd, but you're healing before you're even done treatment." I mean, what do you mean? And she was like, "Your skin is already starting to heal. Like,
Mhm.
it's already going through the healing stages that you're not even done." She's like, "Your body is healing a lot faster than we assumed, right?" So by the time I was done treatment, I'm saying my outside burns were already kind of done the healing stages where there was pain that those layers of skin and new layers are starting to come out. But like having like the burns on the inside of your mouth and having to still be when you sleep, you still have to be lying up because you're gonna feel on your spit. I remember I never got sleep. I was awake every hour, almost on the hour, having to spit. Otherwise, I would get choked on it because my swallowing reflexes were so weak at the time.
Mm.
So I think it actually took a good couple of months where some normalcy started to like show itself, and even then, it wasn't anything close to normal. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's such a good reminder that it just takes time, and the increments are small, and also they're not always linear. They kind of zigzag a bit,
Mm-hmm.
like. But the spitting is a really good point because I think a lot of us kind of forget about it. And I say proverbial us because it's not me, because I didn't have radiation, so I don't know. But I mean, as in the community, we see that a lot come up. We have a lot of people affectionately refer to their spit bucket to try and. But the choking hazard. I haven't actually ever thought of that. But the choking hazard, if your swallow isn't if your swallow has been affected, that can be quite dangerous. So then waking up every hour, oh my God,
And your
Roz.
saliva starts to get really thick too, right? So
Yeah.
it almost starts to get the consistency of like mucus. So that it's not you're already not being able to swallow. It starts to pull in your mouth, and then when you breathe, of course everything's gonna go in at the same time, right? So it was pretty horrendous at that time. It was hard to sleep. It was difficult. Yeah, very difficult.
Yeah. And we all know sleep deprivation makes us more perceptible to pain, um, makes us just more groggy, less able to function and cope as well. So, gosh, you've really been through it. I did want to speak of pain, and I'm looking at the time, so I really want to make sure that we talk about these two things. Now, I remember when we first started
Yeah.
Young Tongues, and you got in touch and you said, "Barbara, we need to speak more about pain and alternative ways of treating pain." And being in the UK, where things are still a little bit behind, I was slightly nervous. But you wrote this document up for me, and it is all on all our social media and things, and it will feature on our website once our new website is built. But you provided us with such a great case study on how to manage pain, not with opioids, but with cannabis. Can you talk a bit about that, Roz? How did that develop? When did you start on opioids and you didn't like it, or it didn't agree with you? What was that journey like?
So I'm in Vancouver. So cannabis is very illegal. I was already a recreational user. But like I said earlier, I saw my aunt through her breast cancer, and she was quite open about the fact that she had turned to cannabis, because her husband was quite open to it. Um, so at that point, I remember I was in so much pain. They were offering me morphine. They were also offering me fentanyl patches. But at that point, I said no. I'm gonna go the cannabis route. And whether or not that meant I was my own guinea pig, I had to do my own research. I had to look on other studies, which was difficult to find because, pharma, and I'm just not get into that, but it was difficult to find. But I did find some, and I did find a lot of it was more patient-led. And so I had to use myself as kind of a guinea pig. So I had found some research saying that CBD really helped with inflammation. And I know that a lot of pain is caused by inflammation, right? So I was taking high doses of CBD. I was fortunate enough as well that prior to me being diagnosed, there was a dispensary that had opened right near my house. And we had welcomed the people to the community, and they were actually became really good friends. And when I was diagnosed, they started to give me cannabis to help me, and they were trying to find things to help me, like pills and stuff. So I was on high doses of THC to help me manage my sleep. So I was able to sleep on doses of THC and CBD. I did find that the CBD did help with the pain. So because of that, the only thing I was taking for painkiller was children's Tylenol. Children's liquid Tylenol, like by the bottle. Like mind you, I was like drinking it, like but I avoided opiates. I had oxycodone prescription with me just in case, but they were pills, right? And it was really hard enough to swallow liquid. So I wasn't taking the oxy. It gave me constipation, which is something I didn't want to deal with on top of what my body was going through. So I was ingesting cannabis through edibles, coconut oil, and like coffee that had THC in it. Yeah, so cannabis was my pain management throughout all of treatment. And
that is amazing, Rosen. And I just need to say here, for health and safety reasons, Roz chose that path. You were in conversation with your medical team, so they kind of knew what you were doing, and you took the risk of managing your pain with cannabis on yourself. It is obviously legal where Roz lives, so that's all fine. If you live in a country where it is not illegal, or where if your team advises you against it, we always say don't go against medical advice. Be safe and all of that.
I do want to add, there was a point in my journey before I went through treatment, because I saw that my aunt had gone through with her treatment, where I actually did not want to do radiation and chemotherapy. I was gonna do the whole guinea pig and do the full cannabis route and do the the coffee enemas, and I was literally researching all that because I saw what my aunt went through. My sister cried and was like, "No, you have to do treatment." And then I actually had a friend reach out to me, and he was like, "Listen, I understand you want to do the cannabis way, but you need to understand that these medical professionals are leading you in this direction because they have seen people through the end of this. They're not doing this blind. They know what they're doing. They've seen patients come out the end of this." And the moment he had that conversation with me, I was like, yeah, I can't think I'm smarter than these surgeons and these people who went through years of school and have seen patients survive through this because of what they've helped them through. So instead of, trying to be a smart ass myself, I was like, I'm not going to discredit them for the work that they've done because they've brought me here as far as I've gone already. So instead, I'm going to complement that. And I'm going to see what I can control. And they were fully aware. Like they knew I was on cannabis, and even before I would go through chemotherapy, the nurses were like, "Did you take your THC?" And I said, "Yes, I did." And so they were aware the entire thing. That it wasn't hidden
Yeah.
from them at all. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that bit is actually really important because we never know how one drug reacts with another drug. So whatever you do, don't keep things from your doctors.
Yeah.
And I'm also, Roz, I am so glad that, obviously, I'm really glad you didn't go down the enema and the alternative route, but chose to have actually chemo. But it's really important, actually. It's a really, these are really difficult but important discussions because I can also see the value how some people may class as alternative or supplementary natural medicines. They do have a place, not as a cure, not I'm saying at all, but to help you get through this really harsh, brutal treatment and the healing and the managing the pain. There are benefits there. Unfortunately, there isn't enough clinical research or investment in clinical research happening in that area. There is some, and we are always excited to see more because I think it's what we all want. We all want to know what works and what doesn't work, does it? So if something doesn't work, might as well not bother. But we also want to know what has the opportunity to actually help us get through this. And I'm so glad. I'm glad for yourself, but I'm also glad that you ended up sharing your experience with us. So I'm really grateful for that, Roz.
Yeah. And like I said, someone's story is someone else's survival guide. So that's what I've always said along the way.
Absolutely. And the other thing I really want to talk to you about, because you were on a part of a big campaign in Canada to raise awareness, but also you wrote a cookbook. You found your way back to food. You're a huge foodie. Can you tell us a bit about your food journey and how you managed going from, struggling to swallow, rebuilding your swallow, and building yourself up to food and taste?
Oh man, I don't really remember how it started off. I remember I started the because I had started my own community at the time, and people were trying to find ways to eat too, and I really had recipes out there, right? And I was a part of the campaign with BC Hampshire to help open another dental clinic out in the Fraser Valley. And I was like, hey, well, I might as well just put all my recipes into the book and then just start putting it online as a digital platform. And it's still out there. I'm not really quite sure if people are still out there purchasing it. But whatever I had made, I had donated to the Hampshire agency. And from there, like, things just started to domino effect with how I started to work with the community and whatnot. And then I ended up ending up with another book, and I believe I don't remember if I had put it out yet. I think I started to like advertise it, but I never really completed it. But I started doing an Instagram page where it was kind of my journeys of eating through my travels as a cancer survivor, and I was actually rated as to like how I'm a cancer survivor and like enjoy the foods out there because there's no reason why we can't enjoy the foods out there for us, right? Yeah, so I don't know. Like I said, like even though like what I've been through was difficult, like the purpose that came out behind all of it became so much bigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's healing, in my opinion. I mean, that's why Young Tongues exist, because I was devastated by this and I needed to find an outlet. So I think helping others, creating things of value, sharing your stories is all part of this journey. It's what makes us who we are. So no, thank you, Roz, so much. I'm just looking at the clock, so we've come up to time. We've been doing this for an hour. This is great. Continue for more.
I want to show you my mask.
Oh yes, bring your mask. Yes, please.
I actually, I realized that I was very artistic, and I actually turned it into a lion mask.
That is so awesome.
It was like my way of taking my power back. Because I'm also a Leo, as Leo season is coming up. Yeah. And I have this hanging in the office as like a reminder of like, on the inside of that mask you can see what the actual mask looks like. But what had to develop in order for me to get to where I am today.
Absolutely. And I love that roaring line. Absolutely love it. So thank you so much, Roz, for coming on. I really appreciate it. I really hope I'm just going to plant this seed. I know in the future, probably next year now, because I'm quite booked up with other panels, but I am going to do a panel on dating. And I think you'd be perfect on there. We'd love to have you on there to hear about your experiences. Amazing. Fabulous. Well, Roz, thank you so much for coming along. It's been an absolute pleasure, delightful pleasure, I was going to say. And also, it's just so nice to finally get to meet you and get to hang. Appreciate it.
In person one day.
Absolutely. Hey, Canada's on my list, so don't you worry. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to our listeners for being with us for another episode. We'll be back next week. If you want to come on the podcast, visit our website. There's a form on there. We are pretty booked out for this season, but there's always other opportunities. So thank you so much. Give us a follow and a like, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.